And now we'll go into the computer or digital forensics process and how it integrates into the IR process as well. Okay, so NIST 800-86 is the NIST publication, special publication that covers forensics or digital forensics in this case. And they talk specifically about those 4 steps, right? And if you remember the acronym SEER with a C, we talk about collection, examination, analysis, and then of course reporting. And these are integrated into different steps in incident response. Some of them, like it says, we do either repeat, because sometimes you do lots of collecting based on even examination if you find out that you don't have what you need, versus every time you go someplace and you think you're hitting the right spot or getting the right device, you may end up finding out during examination that you do not actually have what you need. So you will be repeating those processes. But remember SEER and remember the first 3 at least are usually used in a cycle to parse through your first piece of collection. Okay, collection can happen, of course, during an incident, and a lot of times, since you won't know exactly whether or not the incident itself is continuing, a lot of stuff happens after it has already occurred. So that's just part of the cycle. There's not a whole lot other than being ready that you can do about that part of it. It is a very, very important part of the forensic process, especially as far as evidence collection goes. It has to be done right, and it has to be done according to procedure for it to count. And you definitely want to make it count. Right? Everything done should be documented. Again, this is the repeatability and verifiability piece of it. Make sure it's documented in a way that can be verified. And this is the evidence in the balance of picking up the right amount of items. Is data should be collected from areas or systems that are reasonably expected to contain usable, relevant information. Again, you should not, just because it's a specific subnet does not mean you need to gather from every single host or every single system within that subnet. Use your resources wisely. They are limited, as we all know as IT folks. They are limited. So do the concentrating as you need to. Sometimes time is a factor, and if you only have a limited time on site, maybe you do need to grab as much as you can while you're there, type of thing, and you have to be on your way. There are limitations as far as operations goes, where sometimes you've got to gather as much as you can. So that little piece of advice may go out the window if you are talking about limited time frame. There's some other times too where collection may be limited, like if the laptop that you discover has a battery life of 10 minutes left, 20 minutes left, whatever it is, and there's no power source available right away. Same with cell phones or portable devices, right? If your batteries are going out, you need to grab as much as you can. Sometimes you can't sit there and sift through it and go, I'd like to get this, I'd like to get that. You get what you can as much as possible. You can get a feel for what would be important within that, but generally speaking, you go ahead and grab as much as you can if you have a limited time frame, limited scope that you can collect. So pretty straightforward, right? Develop a plan. If you have the time to do this, acquire that data, and then verify the integrity of the data. That piece is very, very important, and that's essentially using what we talked about this morning, hashing, to verify that the data is what it's supposed to be. And there may be a case where they go back and they try to verify it after the fact, and they run that same hash algorithm over the data, the original data set that was used, to verify that nothing was tampered with and nothing was damaged. So the E part of SEER, examination, right? And this is the initial look at all the stuff that you've gathered. So there's a lot of parsing. There's a lot of stuff to look at, right? You want to go through and try to find just the important pieces during this part. Some of this, or a good bit of it actually, can be automated, but there are parts of that you're going to have to go through and manually look through things. That is a time-consuming part. There's not a whole lot of shortcuts for this other than coming up with good filter, maybe some scripts that you can come up with that you can parse through things that you're specifically looking for. Well-targeted questions, well-targeted ideas of where things might go will help you get through this a little bit faster. Think about, where it's heading, where it started from, what you're seeing, and do a little bit of storyboarding, if you will, on your own, and start to work in the directions that make somewhat logical sense versus just branching out and going, okay, I'm just going to look at all the neighbors or whatever the system or the situation is. Do a little bit of storyboarding. They often say when you're in a hurry, the first thing you do is stop and think. So in this case, that can hold true as well. Take your best guesses, educated guesses when you're dealing with examination. And then again, this is also a time where you want to be documenting what it is you examined and making sure it's repeatable and verifiable. Most of this will be examination on forensic copies of things. But you do want it repeatable because if you happen to do some parsing or some filtering and you got to a certain point where the data became a smaller data set, you want somebody else to be able to repeat that and get back to the same thing. Sometimes those forensic copies go bad. So if you have to go back and get another copy and then do the same thing, but you forgot what it was that you did to parse it all down to make it into that smaller data set, that would be extra work on your part or whoever else is following that piece. And then, so here are some of the techniques, obviously not all inclusive, that can be used during the examination technique. The word analysis is in there because of what we're using, and these particular techniques can also be used for the most part during the analysis phase, but a lot of this can be used. There's file signature analysis. Sometimes things have a dot something extension, like a dot PDF, but it's not truly a PDF. It might be an exe, but you have to actually look at the header. You have to look at the file type in order to find that. Some things like JPEG image files, picture files, right? They have actual headers and footers that designate where they start and where they end. So sometimes that file signature might be the way that you can find it if you happen to be grabbing deleted material or unallocated or recently unallocated space on a hard drive. You'd be looking at the file signature to see if you can find the types of files that your investigation may be looking for. And that's the data carving piece, is using those signatures, if you will. And that's not the only type, obviously JPEG, but other types of files have a particular header or a particular way it ends. And so you want to be looking for those kinds of pieces. And then since it'll be kind of in the middle of some perhaps slack space or some, again, recently unallocated space, you'll go and grab that piece. AV scanning seems simple enough, but actually, has anybody ever used VirusTotal before? Okay, for those of you that don't know, there's a website called virustotal.com, and I think it's 63, does that sound about right? 63 different antivirus vendors have systems within VirusTotal, and you can do actually 3 different things. One is you can upload a file onto virustotal.com, and it'll scan it against these 63 different types of antivirus software. And so you'll get a percentage, right? Usually, the majority of the things that I've scanned either have nothing or they have 1 or 2 that think it's kind of a possibly wonky piece of malware. Rarely, and I've not seen it from anything I've actually put in there, will you get the giant, no kidding, this is really, really bad stuff, because that's not the case. You can either do that, and you can also use the URL if you happen to be on whatever your favorite search engine is, and you see something, but you're wondering, I don't know if this is actually a legitimate or at least a safe website that I can surf to. What you can do is you can go to virustotal.com, and there's a tab for URL scanning, and you can copy that URL in, paste it into their thing, and tell them to scan it. And what they'll do is, I don't know how many levels deep they actually go, but they do go to that site. So if it's one of those, either a watering hole attack type of place, or if it's got a web drive-by that automatically, as soon as you pop up its site, if it's got an iframe that'll start throwing a piece of malware on, it'll actually find that, and it'll tell you that this site is not safe. So that being said, scanning with different types of AV, and if the AV sometimes is disabled but not obviously disabled to a person if it's on a host. So sometimes taking it off, having a copy of it, and actually running it on something that's not affected by a compromised system may be a good way to figure out if something's on there. Yes?
Interesting thing I saw on VirusTotal was I submitted something and it pulled back results from the last time it was scanned, which was like 2 months ago. Most of the time it's pretty recent, but
right.
Sometimes you see something that's a little older, and if you rescan, the results might vary now that definitions have changed
right.
for all those.
That's true. Yep,
scanners.
Within the last 2 months you would
Yeah.
see the updates on there as well.
And another one was malware, like mawr.com. It does a similar type thing. It uses, it's based off of Cuckoo, which scans files, runs them in Sandbox, and sees if they're malicious.
If anything happens
but
to
it
them.
shows you online the same type of results that the VirusTotal does.
Okay. And then the third thing, now that you mentioned it, the third thing that VirusTotal allows you to do is do a search, but you do it based on a hash. So what you can do is, if you trust the piece of what software that you actually have, not to do something on its own and start going, you can actually hash it using something like MD5 Deep or some of the other products that are out there, and you can take that hash and actually enter it into VirusTotal in their search box, and then hit enter, and it'll actually go and those files that you put in there are actually kept on record. If they're benign or whatever, I don't know if they really keep those, or if they keep a hash anyway to go, yeah, we have a copy, but it's fine type of thing. But the other software that you submit, part of what happens to that is you don't get it back or anything. They just keep that copy. And if it is malicious, my understanding is they work with the other antivirus. I imagine if it's a vendor-specific type of thing, if it's a piece of a application that might be affected, then they probably work with that vendor to try to get that fixed. And then my understanding is that they actually send that to all those other antivirus companies that are a part of that list, and then they're able to come up with a signature that should be able to capture it. So the search function is for the hashing of those particular pieces of software in general, but malware, and you can actually put that in, and you can search for hashes of. So if you don't necessarily want to put it in there for whatever reason, you can take a hash of it, and then you can submit that to VirusTotal as well. Okay, and decryption. On the surface, that sounds a little bit harder than just the standard, those other things that you can do with the file. Sometimes there are programs out there that can figure out what encryption algorithm was used to encrypt it, and there's a chance that it can be brute forced, or if it happens to be something like, I'm trying to remember, I think there's some Office products where they're encrypted based on a certain algorithm that's already been posted, so it's a matter of running it to see if you can decrypt it. But my understanding is it's a pretty weak encryption. So most of the time, if you find something encrypted, like CryptoLocker, or the ransomware type stuff, those are encrypted in such a way that brute forcing would be at least hugely time-consuming and resource-consuming, where you would have to have supercomputers run it for a long, long time. So decryption is an option, but it's not obviously the real obvious first choice for doing it. Email analysis you might be looking for attachments, you might be looking for links. If the display name or the email address of the sender, the source email address does not match with what's actually inside the headers, that may be something to be looking for. And you can probably come up with a script of some sort to at least scan through a significant amount of emails to see if that's the case for those kind of things. Keyword and string searches, right? These are could be quite a few different things, but in order to get the huge number of data down into a manageable size, you may need to use some of these either keywords or strings to try to bring that down to a reasonable size when it talks about it. If you know an incident, for some reason, whatever your big project name is for, I don't know, I'll just pick Excelsior or something, is the code name of your very important project that you have at your company, well, then maybe you should be looking for some Excelsior type documents. That sort of thing is what we're talking about here.